Hello and welcome to the Strong Suit Podcast, where we focus on the people part of your business. Every single episode, I feature a world-class expert on talent and recruiting in growth stage companies so that you can build a company filled with rock stars. And I am super pumped to speak with my guest today, Guy Friedman. Let me tell you briefly about Guy and his business because it is super cool and frankly pretty important. So Guy and his team are building a company called SteadyMD, based in the great town of St. Louis, and it's in a really interesting growth category of telemedicine. So essentially, this is a company that is focused on a totally new approach to primary care with 25 employees. Guy and his team are essentially providing ongoing, dedicated primary care online so that patients can develop a personal relationship with their doctor through web, through text, through mobile, video, smoke signal, the whole enchilada. So I am super excited to talk to Guy. How are you, Guy?
That was a great pitch. You need to pitch my company for me.
If you need to raise money, call me, okay?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's super fun to have you on the show. So why don't we just kind of share a little bit of your personal journey before we talk about the business? And what was it about your backstory that kind of led you to this point? So did you have a bad experience with a doctor or something, or what got you here?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm an entrepreneur. I had a previous startup in the educational technology space. That was a business called online proctoring. Well, the category of the business was called online proctoring, where if you take a test remotely for a college or university, we'd watch you over the webcam so you couldn't cheat during that.
Got it. So it was like online proctoring, basically.
Exactly, online proctoring. So yeah. So that was my first kind of dipping my toe into the water of startups. And I always kind of brainstormed or had the idea that sort of platform could be applied to medicine. So that's kind of how I started to look into telemedicine.
You kind of fell into it, right?
Exactly.
From the medicine.
Exactly. So I knew, okay, connect someone up via video, present the proctor or doctor, whoever, with information in a scalable way. But actually, the more I looked into traditional telemedicine, which is actually very different from what we do, the more I hated it. I think there's a place for it, but really what they're doing in most of the big companies that provide telemedicine services is urgent care.
Yeah.
So you press a button on your phone or call a number, and you're connected with a random doctor somewhere in the U.S.
So it's almost triage. If your arm's about to fall off, you call them and they help you through it. Whereas you're doing what?
We're in a category called Concierge Medicine. Mm-hmm. So basically, the patient pays a yearly or monthly fee, and they're connected to a dedicated doctor who becomes their personal physician.
I get to know that doctor. It's not a random rotation. It's an assignment.
No, exactly. So when you create that dynamic between the doctor and the patient, they can develop a much deeper and more focused relationship, and all the kind of pressure that people talk about, the negative side of medicine right now, which is the pressure for doctors to see as many patients as possible.
Sure.
Them getting squeezed by insurance and having to churn through multiple patients per day, and the reimbursement rates keep going down, so the pressure keeps increasing. We kind of relieve that pressure from the doctor and the patient, and you just have a relationship with your doctor.
And so you're not dealing with the healthcare insurance system. It's all private.
Not at all. So you pay one flat monthly fee, and you get unlimited care from your doctor.
Can I ask what that fee is roughly?
Sure. It's $79 to $99 a month.
So how is that possible? That seems extremely low.
Thank you. Yeah, basically when you strip out everything, the office, the staff, and you kind of consolidate a lot of that stuff at our home office in St. Louis, really all you have left is the relationship between the patient and the doctor.
So you're really taking out all the overhead.
Exactly. And so what we focus on is enhancing and strengthening that relationship between the patient and the doctor. So every patient comes to us, they can pick a doctor that's aligned with their life. And if you go to our website, you'll see we have different lifestyle categories.
Yep.
Each of our doctors is an absolute expert in that specific category, as well as a practitioner.
Yep.
So you have an hour-long phone call with a doctor that not only is very knowledgeable in the clinical sense, but also as part of your tribe or someone that really can relate to you.
Got it.
And then from that point forward, after you have your 1 hour onboarding, you're connected to that doctor via phone, video, but most of our volume is actually via our chat application.
Chat? Did you say chat and text?
Yeah, chat application. So
that's the most common mode of interaction.
Exactly. And if some of your users, I mean, some of your listeners use Slack,
yeah,
the same kind of dynamic between
got it.
How you went from like email and phone calls to Slack.
Yeah, because it's asynchronous and it doesn't, they don't have to be lined up at exactly the right time.
Exactly. So if you have an issue that doesn't need something or doesn't need an answer right away, you can leave a message for your doctor.
Got it.
He'll get back to you, let's say within a few hours.
Right. And because it's not an emergency, my arm's not falling off, that model works real well.
Yeah, and also for a lot of primary care is not about solving something in 10 minutes. It's about solving it over time. So,
sure.
Hey, I have this issue. I'd like to resolve it in the next 6 months. Our doctors can say, okay, check in with me via the chat app once a week for the next 6 months. That relieves a ton of pressure around finding an appointment slot, talking to the doctor and getting everything resolved in those 10 minutes. And then, oh no, you have to see a specialist, then come back. It's a ton of time, energy, cost. Our doctors can resolve problems, whether it takes 5 hours or 5 minutes.
Yep.
They're only focused on taking care of the patient and making sure that they're being provided great primary care, which really I think a lot of doctors in primary care want to go back to that, and they're pressured into a more like urgent care environment.
Yep.
Once they enter the working world, either at a hospital or even in a private practice.
Got it. Now, in the pre-interview, we talked about a very interesting structure of your team. So I'm going to shift now to the people part of the business. So you've
Sure.
got kind of a hybrid team, as I understand it. You got 15 physicians and then 10, non-physicians. I'm assuming business people, software developers, whatever. Is that right, roughly?
Yeah. So we have physicians all over the U.S. They're in various states of part-time or full-time, depending on their patient load. And then internally in the office, we have a support staff for the doctors. So when our doctors interact with the patient, they're not worrying about anything. We provide all the licensing, which is a big part of the business, actually. The technology, the EMR, the medical assistance.
Yep.
And then of course we have a technology group, marketing team, and all that within SteadyMD Incorporated. Yeah.
So I can imagine our listeners having a question around how do you make the decision, because some other business models have to wrestle with this decision.
Sure.
Around employees versus kind of freelance contractors. So are your 15 physicians employed by?
No, they're all independent contractors.
Okay.
I think that's a more of a question of how we scale up and how many patients they have. Eventually we'll have full-time doctors.
Oh, so you will start to bring them in-house full-time as employees.
The goal is to have them all full-time. So when they're full-time with us, that means they can focus all their energy on our patients.
Got it.
A typical primary care doctor has about 3,000 patients in their panel.
Yep.
And they see 20 or 30 patients a day.
Yep.
And our doctors will have between 500 and 600.
That's much closer to a typical concierge structure.
Yeah, and additionally, we don't bill insurance. So 50% of the time, primary care doctor is working on the EMR and trying to code stuff so they can get paid by the insurance company.
Yeah.
We eliminate most of that as well.
Yep.
So it just becomes they can devote all their time and attention to actually the care piece and the clinical side versus.
Got it. So it's a little like Uber in that, well, it's not as transactional. You're really recruiting patients and recruiting doctors.
Yeah, in that sense. I mean, we're the anti-Uber in terms of in the telemedicine space specifically, meaning.
Of course.
For Uber, you get a random driver every time.
This is a total relationship. I get that.
Yeah,
You'd be like a private driver, the same individual every time. How do you go about recruiting physicians? I'm just curious. Physicians who are contractors.
Yeah, it's a great question.
How do you find them, and what is the value proposition to them?
Yeah, so like I said, a typical physician, primary care physician, whether they're in a hospital or private practice, they're probably responsible for 2,500 to 3,000 people in their panel. So they're seeing 20, 30 patients a day, and it's also the lowest paid, one of the bottom paid specialties within medicine.
Amazing.
There's a lot of dissatisfaction in the primary care field from the doctor side. So this is not just a platform for patients. This actually is bringing a lot of, I'd say, satisfaction and delight on the doctor side as well. So with no advertising or marketing, we actually get an application every few days from doctors.
Wow.
I don't think we're not going to get to 100,000 doctors that way. Eventually, we're going to have to start recruiting them. But right now, it's just, there's just so much dissatisfaction. Everyone's really looking for something that allows them to do what they went into medicine for, which is really see a patient and connect with them.
Yeah.
And provide continuous long-term care, preventative medicine. So as a result, a lot of our doctors have just come to us interested.
You're really capitalizing on their dissatisfaction.
Exactly. Their alternative is, they're in that system where they're constantly being billed, or they're constantly billing insurance companies, and they're under pressure to see as many patients as possible.
Yeah.
You can take a step back, see 500 to 600 patients for the long term. They're your patients, and don't do anything else except take care of them. Don't worry about anything else. We'll take care of that on our end. And when you relieve that stress and pressure, it's like so much more satisfying of a lifestyle. Not only that, like little things like, a doctor goes on vacation, he's losing money kind of right now.
Yeah, sure.
So we said, go to, work wherever you want.
Yeah.
And maintain that relationship with your patients.
Yeah.
Check in once a day to the platform. Don't do in-person or video appointments that day. But you can go on vacation for a week, or you can take a normal vacation as well. But this allows so much more flexibility for doctors who are entrepreneurial and that want to do interesting things and travel and have a less stressful lifestyle.
What do you do when a physician leaves, or one day physician hits the lottery and decides to retire or leave? What do you do in terms of replacing that physician for that patient? To your point earlier,
that's a great question. We haven't had much of that in the current business, but I think given it's an online platform where you have this long chat history with the patient, and all of our records are synced up, we have the back office. We can seamlessly transition a like-minded doctor within the platform.
Got it.
So let's say one of our biggest categories actually is weightlifting. So sometimes people chuckle at that, but if you're really into strength training and weightlifting, it really changes your body, your physiology. There's a lot of medical issues that go with that. And if you go to a local primary care doctor, they're not going to know about the latest research about, the nutritional stuff you put in your body, things like that. So our doctors actually, we can replace a doctor who has knowledge about that subject with another doctor who has knowledge about that subject seamlessly. So imagine if your doctor retired in Chicago, what would happen?
Yep.
You'd probably either someone would buy the practice, or more likely these days it just shuts down. You have to find another doctor and wait months to see a new one.
I've had that happen to me.
Yeah, everyone has. I mean, the private practice primary care doctor is kind of getting squeezed out, and most primary care doctors are going into either working at the hospital or in more like urgent care settings.
Got it.
So if your doctor retires or leaves or goes to work at the hospital, they're not getting replaced by a new crop. So in the future, we're going to slide right in there in terms of giving people an option if they actually want a doctor-patient relationship.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're going to be going to urgent care, things like that.
Tell us about a recruiting success that you've had in the past 12 months, and that you don't have to name names, but maybe it was a Rockstar that you hired or something. Maybe it was a little bit of luck, but give kind of the story of recruiting that just goes flawlessly.
Sure. So I think we've learned a lot in the last year with recruiting, and we've had a few misfires and a few successes. I think for me, it's about finding the right mindset. So we actually have a great crop of like entry-level candidates here, and they do all the kind of grunt work that makes the medical operation run smoothly. Whether it's finding a referral for a patient, or making sure that they have a pharmacy is available for them, and when they're traveling or things like that.
Yeah.
So I think they have a very nice group out here in St. Louis in terms of that skill set. in terms, just like we recruit a lot from the local university here, SLU, which so it's, I hadn't really been familiar with it, but I've been really impressed with the grads from there. And then I think in terms of marketing and biz dev, our office is in Los Angeles, but it's a little outside. So we sort of learned recruiting like from the southern part of LA is actually less convenient than recruiting from all over and having someone move to be part of the office. So that was one kind of like, LA really isn't our target market, because if you're in LA, you could live an hour and a half away from our office.
Right.
So it was just like a mental shift there. Yeah, but I think I don't really have an aha moment it's just a discipline and methodology around finding the right people who are a good kind of cultural fit.
I'm sure you spent a lot of time on it. If you've ramped from 0 to 25 people in a short period of time, you mentioned along the way you've had a few misfires. What, again, you don't have to name names, but what was the type of misfire? What happened? What did you miss?
I think it's like you gotta work and start out like kind of the top of the funnel. Be really, I don't know if this was a failure on our part, but I think it's like I'm really focused on being transparent. I think this is sort of the new. I've seen it repeated again and again in a lot of different like kind of books and press these days. So I guess maybe it's the new thing. But like I think the best way to align a new hire and also someone who's coming in is tell them actually how the business works and how they're contributing to the business.
Yep.
Which is not something I was really like when I got my first entry level job. I had no idea how the business kind of made money and how much money they made. I just knew my salary and my job. But I think if you really kind of like focus in on like, hey, this is how our business operates, and this is how the actual mechanics of the business run, and here's your part.
Right. So connecting their role to the broader mission and the broader way the business model works.
Yeah, I'd say not just the mission, like actually factually the numbers of the business,
like the financials.
Yeah, even that, not at the nitty gritty level.
Yeah.
But basic unit economic, like here's how a patient travels through our funnel.
Yep.
Here's what happens when they come to us.
Yep.
Here's what happens if they stay with us on the business side. And then there's the mission of, wow, you get to make people healthier and have a much better life because you're connecting them with a doctor. Those two things combined, if you're upfront about that, and that kind of aligns everyone from the start, I think that's like a really great way to kind of scale up and maintain quality.
What have you done to kind of put even a rudimentary onboarding in place to handle that? Do you do that personally? Do you sit down with every new hire and go through the financials?
Yeah, right now. I mean, we're not that big. Right now. Yeah, absolutely. Right now, I mean, I think, well, obviously the employees are different than the doctors. The doctors as well are aligned, but a lot of them are mature guys and gals that have a great sense of like the medical side, but they would need to be educated on kind of the business side of what we're doing. But we're all aligned kind of on this mission to really disrupt primary care.
Right.
And create kind of a whole new paradigm, and everyone is completely aligned on that in the company, and that's probably the number one most important thing.
As the business has scaled to 25 people, especially geographically distributed, what have you learned about communication to keep them all on the same page, to keep them all in alignment, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I have a few different like kind of like my own personal way I like to operate. One thing is I like to kind of have this overarching one goal per person, and that's really like that's your number on the whiteboard. That's what we should be focused on.
Yep.
And then
that varies by role, or you mean an overall?
Yeah, it varies by role. Like this is the job.
Yep.
And then of course, how do we get there? What are the steps we take to get to this goal? And this is the goal that we're going to be tracking, and that makes it a lot easier for me as the CEO to kind of monitor everyone.
Right.
But I think honestly, like practically, Slack and Trello. I mean, those are the two tools that we use internally to organize what everyone's doing.
Yep.
And I mean, I don't know what I'd do without it. We basically run our business through those two things. If you're diligent about updating all that stuff, like if you're diligent about updating Trello or whatever project management software you're using,
Yeah.
it's like, here are the steps how to get to the result. If we do these steps, it should result in this. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, you know?
Yep. Yep.
But at least we agree on the steps, and it's a nice way to organize your thoughts. And I think the developers did it first, as like they were doing these Kanban boards and crazy stuff, 20 years ago. I don't know when they started that, but
they're always the pioneers.
Yeah, kind of expanded to everything now. And so if you really kind of focus on being disciplined about that stuff, it's not easy. I'm not like perfect at it, but I try and stay disciplined about tracking steps to get to an outcome, and keeping track of everyone. But really, Slack and Trello have really been helpful there.
Setting aside the physicians, where have you found to be the best sources for just great candidates for your other non-physician roles?
It's a good question. I think really through networking. I think you can always put up an ad and get great candidates and run that process. And my co-founder is very good at running the process too. So it's like, he's hired.
When you say run the process, what do you mean? The interview process?
Yeah, the interview process.
Got it.
Yeah, I think in the past I've had good luck with I actually love LinkedIn. I know some people complain about LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn's great in terms of finding people.
Do you mean LinkedIn job postings or actually proactively reaching out to people?
Proactively. The job posting thing's fine too on LinkedIn. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good interface. But I think proactively reaching out to people.
Yep.
I think finding other sources like meetups are good. I've had luck there in the past. Now, we haven't hired anyone from a meetup from this, but I think those are always there's always folks you can find. I think you just got to treat it kind of like business development. It's grind away, talk to as many people as possible, tap your network.
Yeah, it's always be recruiting, just like always be selling.
Exactly. It's one thing's for sure, you're not just especially for the hard to find roles, marketing, developers. It's tough just to throw, unless you have a ton of money, which then it works. And if you don't have a ton of money to offer, it's tough just to throw up an ad and you got to kind of work hard, work your network, stuff like that.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm all over the place right now.
No, I totally get it. What about
I'll probably listen to it and be like, should have been more concise. But
what about employee referrals? Has that played not your network, but your first 20 people's network?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially for the staff here in St. Louis, they know people that have a similar skill set and could be a good cultural fit. So I think that's always a good thing to ask first. Hey, do you guys know anyone?
Yeah.
Of course, you want to maintain a diverse environment as well. Sure. So if you do that 50 times, it's gonna be pretty homogeneous. But
yeah, you got to be careful.
In the early days, it works great. We want to be open to different perspectives too, though.
Got it.
So it's kind of balancing those two.
Well, I give you a ton of credit because, Guy, this is obviously a nascent business, a couple of years old, but it's a huge space. Telemedicine is going to redefine how medicine is practiced in the U.S., and I give you a lot of credit. How can people learn more about SteadyMD or get in touch with you?
Well, I'm easy. It's Guy at SteadyMD.com, GUY.
Pretty easy.
And then just go to the website, and if you see a doctor, we're getting to almost be available in every state in the U.S. So if you're interested in finding a doctor that will actually listen to you and have time for you, and most of all, you can text anytime and they'll be available. SteadyMD.com, and you can find a doctor that's right for you, aligned with your life.
Fantastic. Congratulations, and thanks again for spending time with us.
Well, thanks for having me. It was fun. I hope it's helpful to people, and anyone wants to get in touch with me about anything, not business, non-business, whatever. I'm always available.
Again, it's Guy at SteadyMD.com. Fascinating. And just a reminder to our listeners to get ready, aim, and hire.